Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 157. There Are No Dead. This comes from Sophie Radner de Meisner. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. By the way, this lady lived to be 102, so lived from just before the American Civil War well into the nuclear era. I wonder how much of a shock it was. It's like, oh yeah, here comes the hell bomb and stuff like that. Must have been a really weird time to see like television when before they hadn't even like proliferated the telegraph in most of the world. Anyway, 91-page work, so middling in length. Link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books blogs. I've got a large number of other works, some spiritualist in nature as this is. Basically, this work is a number of correspondences between the author, who wrote many other books, although not on spiritual subjects, generally speaking. I believe wrote mainly fantasy literature. Was a socialite, very well-educated individual, very well-traveled, did a lot of charitable work. She's part of that upper crust of society through the late 1800s into the Victorian era. Good time to be really wealthy, absolutely extravagant. Did a lot of stuff. This is a series of correspondences in two forms. First, letters between her and other spiritualists and individuals talking about the spiritual world. And secondly, correspondences as recorded by her conversations between herself as sort of a medium, I believe, in a dream state, and spirits of the departed, starting with her son, other individuals that she knew, and as well as other individuals who were notable, including the captain of the USS Titanic thereafter, after it, of course, made its final voyage to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. She claims to have basically talked to this individual, and the most important part from the occult perspective here is really the detail about what she conceives of as the afterlife, purportedly coming from these spirits. Essentially, this is a place, without having attained a high degree of spiritual development, you find yourself in one of two situations, oddly enough it seems. Either sort of an empty, blank area. The only way to escape it is to basically cry out to Jesus, acknowledge him, and then all of a sudden you're in this other sort of paradise land of sorts. And the other one being you sort of don't even realize you're dead, you just sort of wake up. Your friend is there, leads you to a house, and you sort of do the same things you did in life, only of course you don't need to eat. You're immortal now, there is no disease and pain and stuff like that. It's basically just eternal friendship, and Jesus walks around, especially with orphan children whose parents haven't died yet, and sort of comforts people and hangs out with them. And everything is right, and there's like flowers, and everything's cool. There's books everywhere. She talks a great deal about the literary world, and several times, I have to assume she was a bibliophile, because she mentions several times, hey, everyone has big bookshelves here, basically. Every book can be written still. We still do the same work. We research, we write, we do whatever we want. But there's no greater joy, of course, in this than Jesus. And it looks a little bit like the Theosophical Davidsham. Actually, only purports to be an eternal realm. That this is heaven, basically. And the essential goal of the work is stressing one thing, which is there's no such thing as death. No, there's a continuation of consciousness, literally like that. It's instantaneous. You die, you're not even going to realize that you're dead. Essentially, you're just going to wake up. You're going to be in much the same form as you were before, only it's an incorruptible form. Having been, you believed in Jesus, that happens instantly. If you didn't, eventually other spirits or people on earth who are spiritual will somehow contact you. It could take a long time, but eventually you end up in this sort of paradise. It's a very positive sort of spin to the Christian worldview, I suppose, because specifically it says, well, everyone gets here eventually. It's sort of a Buddhistic slant on it. That's sort of what spiritualism was. It was a much more optimistic appraisal of the state of the world than some of the fire and brimstone contemporaries, and really was at war with it. For decades and decades, you had spiritualism and fire and brimstone ideology. They sort of wipe one another out a few decades later, and then religiosity takes on sort of aspects of it. For instance, even a lot of fire and brimstone people now don't have a problem with the concept that spirits could wander around the world and influence man. In fact, it's very much in vogue in religious circles. They're more likely to believe in it than secular individuals, certainly. Before, the secularists, in a manner, had more of that superstition at times. Fire and brimstone people are like, no, the spirit's not going to walk around the world. It's either in heaven or in hell. It can't be in the world. It's impossible. The spiritualists, of course, at the time disagreed, and there's not much of a spiritualist movement now. And part of that isn't because of any problem with the philosophical side. It's because a bunch of mediums and seance holders turned out to be charlatans. They were exposed by the burgeoning scientific minds of the era. This disgraced a movement that otherwise, in some cases, was really more about philosophy, but really the showmanship sort of brought it low. Just like fire and brimstone ideology in the 80s. 70s, 80s, a lot of televangelists, then a lot of them get it, erupt in scandal. This one's smoking crack. This one hires hookers and stuff. And so it sort of brings their movement down as well in a belated fashion. So again, very interesting work, especially the correspondence with the captain of the Titanic and what he has to say, again, purportedly, about the form and function of the afterlife. Link in the description again to my edition of this work. Second and third links to my books, blogs. Over 150 now edited works just on the occult, as well as authored works and some edited works that aren't fully occultism. That's about all. Peace out.